this one here is now ready for the charge. So finish setting these up.
Doesn't seem like it takes much effort to work that thing.
No, and the RCBS crusher actually comes with this, and it's for priming. Basically what you do is you put your round on your case holder. As it comes down, it would seat the primer, which, yeah, it works, but I like quality over quantity. So I take the extra time, use this, make sure that it seats all the way. Plus you can actually feel the primer seat in place with this, whereas with this unit here, it's just kind of, you got to take it off each time, take a look, make sure that's flat. So
yep. You'll find those on the Lee turret presses too, and they're okay for pistol.
Yeah, they're good for doing stuff at a rapid rate, but for me, when it comes down to rifle reloading, like I said, it's quality over quantity, because I don't go out and shoot 500 rounds a day through my 30-06. I mean, after 50 or 75 rounds, my shoulder's feeling it anyways, so. Especially with the hot rounds. Alright, so at this point, we're all primed. Just going to take this back apart so I can get my case holder.
Right, if you're loading calibers that have different size primers. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, not so much that, but like, if you're, like this case holder only holds, I think, 50 rounds, or 40 rounds, excuse me, at a time. So you do 40 rounds, and then you go and do another 40, and you have to set this up again. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. Whereas if you have two of these case holders, you can keep this set up, keep that set up, you're good to go.
So now you're just doing a quick wipe down?
Yeah, just to get all the case lube off, because there's been times where a little bit of case lube will be inside the neck, and it just causes the powders to stick. So it's just kind of an added step that helps with quality. And they're ready for powder, but before I go on to that step, I'm going to set up my bullet seater. It should be the same for all rounds as long as your case neck is the same length and everything, but I always set it up each time just to make sure. As far as the first step, I do it before powder. The second step, I do it after. These rounds, because they're not the crimp bullets, you don't want to cause any extra crimp on your case. So you're just going to set up the first portion of the die the same way as the resizer. Just put it down until you feel resistance from the case. And you lock it in place. Now that part's good to go. As far as this next knob, I gotta wait until we get the powder in place, because you're actually going to seat a bullet, so you don't want to do that.
And that was similar. That seating die is set up similar to what I did on my turret press. I used a crimp die for the pistol ammo, and what ended up happening, I backed it off so that it's only seating the bullets, it's not crimping.
Yeah, exactly. And after this whole process, we'll actually show you some different rounds as far as crimped versus non-crimped. This part here is going to be the part I put on the powder inside. For these rounds, because they're just going to be more so for planking or woodchucks, I'm just going to call it good with my Uniflow measurer. It's going to stay consistently between about 58.6 and 59.4. You're only talking about 20 extra feet per second at that point. If I'm going for match grade ammo, I'll actually weigh out each powder charge, make sure that's right on the dot, use a trickle, powder trickler, and also if I'm going for match grade, I'll weigh the bullets, weigh the cases, make sure that everything's within spec to ensure optimum accuracy. But woodchucks, you're only talking at most 100 yards. With these rounds, I'm estimating about 3/4 inch groups at 100 yards, so it's plenty good enough for me. So I just pulled the charge handle up, it released the charge inside the bullet, you put it back down, and it just set another charge inside the tool here. But you can see that this charge is now ready. and because it's going to be a compressed load, you can see that the powder is actually up a ways. And when we seat the bullet, it's going to cause the powder to be pushed down, hence compressed. Some of these rounds, like the 168s, you're only talking maybe 45 to 50 grains at a time, so you usually have space between the powder and the bullet. And that's when you want to make sure that you don't get double charged, is when you have space, because at times like that, if you're just speeding right along, that's when you can get a double charge and you blow up your gun. So
I think there's some misconceptions out there too about slow powders versus fast powders, and the slower ones, you tend to need more of them, but you generate higher velocities. And with some of the faster powders, that's where you have a lot of danger of double charging, because there's so much less powder in there.
Exactly. For instance, we're using Varget today. This powder I've found to be absolutely amazing. Here in Maine, we're hunting in temperatures of -10 up to 110 on some days, and Varget is the closest consistency as far as temperature control. You get into other powders like this Hodgdon Superformance. Is what Hornady uses. This is a very fast burning powder, but because of that, when you go from one temperature extreme to the next, you get quite a bit of inconsistency with your velocities. And this H4895 is also a pretty consistent powder. This one here is also a cylinder like the Varget. This one here is a spherical. And also, times with spherical powders, they usually call for a magnum primer. Give you guys a quick look at the spherical powder. You can see that it's actually basically little tiny pellets. And these powders require a magnum primer just to ensure proper ignition. With Varget and other cylinder type powders, you don't want to use a magnum primer, because it's your charges and everything that they list are not set up for that, and a magnum primer will actually cause significantly more case pressure, and that's what will blow up your gun. So